Hello and welcome, friends, to the ℍ𝕠𝕝𝕣𝕣𝕣𝕣 Witchcraft podcast. And we're here with the fastest witch of them all, Mr. Chris. Hello,
Yo,
Mr.
yo,
Chris.
yo.
Oh, hello. What do you think, Mr. Chris, about this whole chakra thing?
It's a basic colour by numbers system.
Is it a collection in it, like Pokemon, got to catch them all?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the idea they try and sell to everybody.
What other things did they try to sell? Necklaces with chakras on? You know, the pendants, obviously a set of chakra crystals. And then, of course, you've also got the matching earrings. Yeah, all sorts. Bag charms, key rings, all these things. Yeah. Are these legit, Mr. Chris? Are they legit?
Well, I don't particularly have a problem with them. I think people don't go far enough with them, if that makes sense.
So you're saying that they're okay, you can purchase them, but are they magical? Will they do anything? Because I think there's this little confusion with some that if they purchase some chakra earrings, that they're somehow magical and that they're imbued with some sort of a power, that they're not some mass-produced stuff from China, you see.
Well, I think they're going to have to accept most of them are mass-produced by China.
Yeah.
I think my biggest problem with them is that people don't seem to understand the separation. So they don't seem to think about actually what we consume as the chakra system is a westernized version of something ancient. So what people tend to do is get all conflated with what they think the system is, and then are surprised when those that still use that system, such as the Ayurvedic medicine, etc., to then realize it's far more complicated than the Rainbow Seven. So I think it's difficult, particularly when so many people spend a lot of time doing yoga these days and get a very different understanding of what they actually are. And they get confused because obviously most yoga teachers try to use the Sanskrit names for everything in order to kind of reinforce that kind of authentic representation.
Reinforce that they didn't just make it up, you mean?
Yeah, when you think a lot of modern yoga practices were created by Japan, I believe, is it?
Reiki came from Japan, didn't it? Reiki
Yeah,
and
that's the one.
chakra. That's one of those things that seem to be very intertwined. And this intertwined, I think, because of the types of practitioner, the people that do it. The chakra system is an interesting system, which I would define as a mapping system, which can be used quite easily for diagnostics within magic. If you don't think of it as a mapping system and utilization for diagnosis and such, then I'm not entirely sure what you think the chakra system is. But most people, I think, are attracted to the fact that it's all mystical and shit, Chris, isn't it? It's all mystical. It looks mystical, and there's pretty colours involved with it. And there's
I was going to say, I think a large part of it is the pretty colours, Liam.
The pretty colours is what catches the people, do you think?
Yeah. I think seeing it as a spectrum, and we're all about the spectrums these days in the woke 21st century. I think the pretty colours helps for the actual understanding of it and making it so simplified. I think if they actually saw how complex it was, in which case, a spectrum works really well in actually helping to understand why they are the way they are. But yeah, I think rainbow mixed with enlightenment all sounds very new agey for me, and I struggle with it. Obviously, we use the chakra system when we meet people who see the world that way, and have to kind of talk them through how that still applies from a witchcraft perspective, because ultimately we'll use any mapping system that's in your brain already to kind of get you where you need to get to.
So I'm gonna stereotype here. I know everyone's thinking, oh God, Liam, here we go, he's starting already. I'm going to do some stereotyping here. It's something that I need to work through, I think, with you, because you're the only person here, at least the only corporeal thing here. So we work through this. Whenever I meet people that are really into the chakra system and using the chakra system, they also seem to be quite into Reiki, and they also seem to be quite into crystals, and they all seem to be quite into either the new age or what I class as kind of new age philosophies and magical systems, if you can call it that, which is about getting to know yourself, balancing yourself, and ushering in some new age, some new great enlightenment. Normally they go vegetarian or vegan, and then they, dream of setting up strange little ashrams or, massage studios and with stone circles outside. Why is this? This must be something that you've noticed also. Why is it that there's this kind of type of person that always seems to gravitate towards working with the chakra system and working with Reiki and in the new age and that? Because I'm not, if all honesty, I'm not finding that when you go to the Far East or somewhere. It's completely different there, where all this stuff's really supposed to have come from now. Why is it that it's this Westerner concept, these Westerners that are also, like, you can put them in a lineup, you can spot them, I mean, it's being really stereotypical, but you fucking can't you? What's up with that?
Well, without putting myself in a box, you can kind of argue this whole idea of the Aquarian age, the age of Aquarius, that has been preempted from like the 60s, of this kind of post-war feeling. So kind of First and Second World War, that kind of is that kind of last part of the age of Pisces, that kind of very, which is even symbolized by it. We tend to not just represent remembrance with the poppy, but the cross is very much part of that. And it's kind of the leftover of that kind of age of Christianity, that kind of age of the fish, and kind of moving into this slightly more fluid representation, which makes sense, because most people would consider the zodiac to be that same wheel, that obviously the word chakra means wheel, I believe, in Sanskrit or something like that, which is where they kind of get this kind of idea, I suppose, of this flow up and down as they kind of turn, and they kind of flow that energy up and down that very linear system, which is a bit crazy in general to kind of simplify a system like that to being so linear, and not seeing these as movable entities. I've had a couple of people in my life who were that way inclined, and I think I've had my chakras realigned a few times.
Oh God!
A very uncomfortable process.
Yeah.
Because obviously I don't center all my energy into zones like that. So, which is the bit that I struggle with most, I think, with the whole chakra system, is this idea of kind of isolating energy into that kind of forced capsulization, because that makes them easier target practice.
Yes.
I know that you quite like setting work for shattering chakras.
I like to set it as homework for our mentees to go and crack people's chakras and break them.
So, but yeah, I suppose part of it, like, you know, I'm blaming the changing cycle that's already there, for the susceptibility of it, why it's so easily spread across the kind of Western world, because they're all in that kind of obsession with enlightenment, and that therefore the older way is the better way. And I suppose that it was the most visual one that was available at the time. Again, it's very westernized, because as we do in the Western world, we take things from the East, and we think we can understand them. So therefore, we kind of all carry them around in this kind of whole process of miscommunication, which I find hilarious, particularly because the Age of Aquarius is all about communication. But, you know, we'll see. I don't know. I'm rambling here. So
I think that we could either delve very deeply into the chakra system, or we could delve very deeply into the Western approach to magic that incorporates the chakra system and human psychology, and why this is all such a popular thing. Or we can take the piss. Normally we would do a little bit of everything, but I think we do need to try and stick to one. Okay. Otherwise we'll end up getting crucified, no doubt. Because I don't think that people would follow along. I think that anyone that tunes into us is either completely new to listening to us and don't really quite understand, and the ones that are listening to us, they're probably going to try and read between the lines, if they know us quite well, try to pick up some of the intriguing occult side of things. I'm not too sure where to go with this. At all. I don't know currently where we're pitching this in terms of audience.
Well, it's the pre part. It's the bit that's available to the plebs, I guess. Those that haven't. So it's first half. So I would say probably let's start with that mystical number 7, and let's kind of say why they limit them to 7. Because obviously, if you were to look at Ayurvedic medicine, there is a much wider connection to far more than 7. I think it actually reaches closer to the magical number 33 myself, but that is for a whole different set of reasons. So I kind of think let's focus on the 7 for starters. Then we can probably go to that. Is it the 13 they talk about when they start to try and marry it up with Egyptian mysticism?
Oh dear. I don't know when that all starts to go really rather sour, doesn't it?
That all starts to get a bit, you know, draw a line before I get to there normally. I'm much more easy taker of the whole getting up closer to 33. But
so are we going for teaching people how the chakra system works and how to interact with their chakras and stuff, or are we going more for the trying to understand the new age concept? Because there's occult ways of working with the chakra system, and then there's the new age ways of working with the chakra system, and the new age ways is far more about psychology and the human condition, I would say, rather than necessarily the occult is, because the occult's very practical, I would say, in terms of if we were to discuss that. And I don't know how many people caught in the trap of Western bullshit occultism would be better off listening to the way in which people stumble across the new age and the chakra system and then thereby get trapped up within it. and don't step outside of that or push beyond the limited information that they're given. I don't know. It's a very difficult one because I want to give something, but at the same time, I also find it a very difficult subject to talk about without keeping a straight face. So the 7 classic chakras. So here we go. If I get my fancy little grotesque chart up, we'll start at the bottom. So you've got your root chakra. They've put survival next to that. You've got the sacral chakra, sexuality. You've got the solar plexus, which is apparently power. You've got the heart, which they've listed as love. You've got the throat, which is listed as communication, ironically enough. And then you've got the third eye, which is intuition. And you've got the crown chakra, which is classed as spirituality. A quick guide to understanding the chakra system is what I typed in to get this. Very, 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 very interesting. Well, not really. It's on a website which is trying to sell you ridiculous things. So for people that are interested in furthering their magical knowledge, presumably trying to help them fulfill their lives, gives a little bit of free information about what each chakra is and what it means and what it does, but then it just tries to sell you jewelry. Herein is where I struggle to differentiate between the bullshit Western wagey stuff with the actual deep magical system, because I would class it as a magical system and a mapping system that's underneath it.
Like I said, I feel what bugs me more is the fact that we would both look at it as a mapping system for understanding energetic body, so that you can kind of self-diagnose and support diagnosis with others. And so they have got, like when we talk about the planetary tree of life, you would be talking about something, so you've got a shared understanding of what that map looks like. What I don't see is people actually exercising beyond that kind of basic level. So when you're going, like they do with auras, because to me it all ties in with these pretty colours of the New Age, which interestingly kind of line up. They reuse the colours that would be on the tree, but they don't use them in the right order because that doesn't look pretty. So if you were to tie those two systems together, they would struggle to actually understand, well, on the orange one over here, the orange one is sexuality. I'm a bit confused because the orange one on your tree is Mercury, and those two things don't go together, because they're not actually understanding the representation that is there. Because at that point, you'd probably put Mercury at the throat chakra, because its dominance would be in the communication factor. But again, that's simplifying things too simply and doesn't actually deliver you any occult knowledge like the chakra system as it's taught and how it's worked with in the Western world, I have to add, because an actual, someone dealing with Ayurvedic medicine would not probably even use the chakra system except to explain something to a novice, because they kind of go, oh, that would probably make sense to you, so I'm going to use this to explain it to you. Because like I say, the points across the body are far more complicated in Ayurvedic medicine.
When we learn our letter sounds in primary school, that isn't really speaking, is it? This is the difference. So what you're doing is you're trying to say, okay, well, there's a lot of energy signatures and stuff to learn. It's really difficult. I know, we're going to break them down. And when you learn when you teach children how to talk and how to write, they learn their letters and they learn their letter sounds and all of that sort of thing. And this is basically what the chakra system is essentially. And then they add more and more and more. So we're starting with 7 potential chakras, but actually it gets more and more advanced. Like this chart shows 114. Okay, it's kind of like, well, that's a lot for a beginner. That's going to be very, very overwhelming for someone in the beginning to really differentiate between these different energy systems, mapping systems, energies that exist and how they interact, psychic highways and other such things, and also universal concepts like what the fuck is beyond the physical world and all that. So it is a system of understanding all things, like the Tree of Life. Some people use the Tree of Life, which is normally what we would use to teach most Western students anyway, because it's so ingrained now into Western occultism, that people tend to be able to use that a little more to have communication with other magical practitioners, which I think is one of the other benefits, isn't it? If everyone speaks a similar language, you speak English, I speak Welsh, but we both, there's a Wenglish, it's kind of like one of these things where, okay, we might not all be having the same experiences and such like that, but there is a common language. If we can come up with some sort of common language, we'll be able to suss out what's going on. And this is an attempt at teaching something like that and pushing it out there. And it does work, but I think much like a lot of things, it's not taught very well, because most things are tend to be taught by beginners to other beginners, and with no idea, I don't know what you would blame more, in all honesty. Do you blame the people that have not pushed information or not pushed to learn more and push deeper down this rabbit hole? Or do you blame the people that do not give that knowledge? Because there's many of people that are working at a high level that use the chakra system and stuff, but they will not tell other people. They won't speak to other people. We were literally having a conversation about this very thing earlier with the map maker. With how far do you go with teaching people or putting it on a plate for people? Traditionally, it was never done, where things were never put on a plate for you. And traditionally is where things are done, in these weird fucking monasteries that you see on some sort of fantasy sci-fi show, which, realistically, some of the mystery schools are still mystery school.
I think it comes down to the fact that that's the difference between kind of Eastern education and Western. I know we've touched on this before, but there is that kind of there is degrees of mastery in the West. It's a case of, oh, well, I've learned all this basic information, so I'm done at that level. And I only need to know that level because it's complete. It's complete. I tell you, it's complete. I went and did 3 weeks at an ashram, and now I completely understand the entire Eastern system. Whereas it's a practice, and I think that's when you find kind of people that really understand yoga. And I know I'm conflating the two, and the two are very different, but there is that kind of part of, it's a practice. You do this every day, and I think there's part of the Western understanding that doesn't get that. I think the Western understanding is, oh, well, I go and do a yoga class once a week. Well, actually, you're not doing yoga, because yoga actually would go being every part of your daily practice. You would be dealing with it whenever you're using breathing technique. It would be whenever you're working a daily routine of, at least a good hour of yoga every day. That is just your practice, where you're exploring your body and the changes in your body, so that you can adjust your practice on a daily basis to where you are as a whole. And I think people misunderstand that kind of concept of holistic, what is treating the whole, because yoga goes as far as what you're putting in your body, and how you change the constitutions of your body and maintain them. And actually, I am not a yoga instructor. I have never been on a yoga instructor course. And I understand that by observing yoga and people that practice yoga. Now, that if I know that much from just watching them, how much should you know if you're doing a yoga class at least once a week? Or one of those that I do 3 classes across the week. During the summer, And one class across the week during the winter, I was okay, would you even understand that change in that body that is happening? And then I think to kind of then stretch that into the kind of chakra system and kind of going, do you understand where these all are every day? And actually, if you were working with them every day, you'd start to see very quickly that 7 isn't enough. You would start to see that there are, 7 is too restrictive. But that is where you start, and you work on that practice and you develop it until it expands to the 33 or the 140 or the 2000. And the reason they'll all differ is because that will be reflective of how many you've gained during progress throughout that practice.
So it's a system of magic, which is very important. It is a genuine, actual system of magic, which means, counter to what a lot of people would think, actually sitting on your throne and changing the universe, not being comfortable and losing yourself like, some of our Buddhist friends do. Oh, that's fine. I'll just accept what the universe is, No, it's actually with the chakra system about changing things to your will to a certain extent. You can do that. It's also a system for understanding yourself, which is why they start with the 7. And then moving on, when you have a deep enough understanding of yourself to mean that your fragile little mind isn't going to break, when you start to explore things outside of yourself, so the universe as a whole. That's why when we go from the chakra system, you've got the 7, another component part that they'll start to add in. So underneath the root chakra, some of them will say, for example, Earth Star goes there. Above the crown chakra, they might say Soul Star, and then Universal, and then Galactic, then Divine Gateway. These are all quite modern names for various other chakras that are added outside. But you'll see on the map or of the system that has been drawn, you've got someone sat cross-legged on the floor with all 7 of them dotted up through their core of their being, through the center line of their body. And then you've got one underneath and you've got several above. These are all very, very symbolic, of different understanding. And most importantly, it's what people are missing, because it's not all about understanding. It's about connection, about you being able to connect and control those parts of you. So if you understand the solar plexus chakra, the heart chakra, the throat chakra, blah, 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 that's mastery of that, or I wouldn't say that, those energy streams, those things. It takes all 7 of those to be mastered, really, or to be decent with them, in order for you to push outside of those in whatever direction, whether you go sideways or whether you go up or whether you go down, doesn't really fucking matter. Now, before people ask, then yes, some of these line up with the tree of life and all of that kind of thing, but the tree of life is many different things added on top of each other. Now, what they do with the chakra system is very different. What they do with that is they add things above or below or to the side and that kind of thing. With the tree of life system, think about looking at the cover of a book. You see that front cover. If you decide to go below that, you flip the page, there's more words, more pictures, more. It doesn't take up any more space or, anything like that. You open it up. Whereas with the chakra system, a lot of the time where people struggle with is that actually is a different way of mapping things. People don't map things the same way. So yes, you go into the chakra, which many people struggle with, but then they add for greater concept of what is outside of myself. What's universal gateway? What's that mean? What does soul star mean? What's that part? Well, you're trying at that point to map down your soul and how it interconnects with all the other souls and the universe of the soul and all that sort of shit. So it is somewhat complicated. I mean, we don't have enough time to give away all of the secrets of the chakra system or teach people all of the secrets of the chakra system. So I think really we need to, for the second half anyway, probably focus on where I think and you think people go wrong. and then maybe they can spot where they're going wrong, and maybe we give them more food for thought and they adapt their practices a little bit.